It's an honor to have you on the show. I first met you at Biohacking Congress a couple months ago. That was my first ever live in-person interview. And I'm looking forward to picking up that conversation and talking more about the practicals, the nitty-gritty, the science of using sauna in one's wellness routine.
Yeah, you did a great job for your first time. I really enjoyed that interview. It was we had a lot of great things we talked about. So yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah. Well, we will warm up again today with the same one as last time. And what are the unusual things you've done so far today for your health, your performance, and your bioharmony?
It's interesting you asked that. I do what I always do. I did my sauna this morning. I'm using the 7 bulb system now. It's kind of the super upgraded version. It's just more stimulating and a quicker session. So I start out with that, and then I stopped drinking coffee recently. I'm drinking a coffee alternative made of Maya root. It's called Jnantik, and I really love it. I actually have some right here that I'm drinking again, my second cup today. It's alkaline based and it's caffeine free, and it looks and it walks and talks like coffee, but it's not coffee and it's not acidic. So I love that change. Basically, it was kind of unusual for me to switch out of caffeine. I'm definitely a caffeine. I love the stimulation of caffeine. So, but backing off of that has helped with my sleep and just energy levels. You know, too much caffeine, too much stimulant, too many stimulants, not good. And then in terms of my harmony, beyond my basic stuff that I've just described, I recently acquired I forget his last name, but Craig is the owner and founder of the inHarmony vibration beds and the cushions. It's a meditation cushion that they have certain audio tracks that they've compiled in their app, and basically there's vibration pads or whatever they're called inside this cushion you sit on. You sit in lotus pose, and the vibrations are in sync with the music that you're listening to. And I just got one of those, and I did that right before this, and I just started using it a couple times, and I really enjoy it. The sort of the therapeutic benefits of vibroacoustic technology, and adding that in. You know, we have all these stimuli. You know, we have all these sensory organs. We love light. We're beings of light. We're also beings of sound and of vibration and sound waves, not just light waves. So I've incorporated that recently into my routine and really enjoy it.
One of my good friends here in Austin actually builds those similar things. He has a vibration cushion and a sound bed. And I was a bit skeptical the first time I used it, but that thing can profoundly change your state pretty quickly. And I've talked to Craig before. He's a good guy trying to educate and inspire all the players in the industry and consumers alike.
Yeah, he's a real respectable guy. I've had the pleasure of meeting him in a couple different events, and finally was convinced to try. And I really enjoy it. I do meditate and do breath work in my sauna and my morning sessions, but I also enjoy this outside of the sauna, and the vibrational aspect is really interesting, and I can feel it calming my nervous system. So it's a great addition to. I have a healing room now, and I have a lot of healing tech in there, and that's just the latest addition to it.
You can use it either way. You can use it to calm the nervous system, or you can also use it to fire you up for performance at the same time. It's really your choice, but I mean, a lot of us already have enough stimulation as is, so it makes sense to go the opposite route and enjoy the rest and relaxation and recovery.
Yeah, and they have a lot of routines in there apparently for anxiety and feeling mood issues, depression, and things like that. I think it's really relevant to a lot of people. So yeah, that's the latest and greatest thing I've added. Really enjoy it.
Yeah. So in part one of this conversation, you gave a explanation, a thorough walkthrough of your history and how you got into sauna usage. But for those that didn't hear the first part, can you recap how you got involved in the sauna industry?
Yeah, I had my own health problems, Nick, over 10 years ago. And I just wanted to look and feel better like everybody else. And so I was I'm not going to say selfish, I'm going to say self-oriented. I was looking for a solution to my own health issues. They were adrenal fatigue related. So I had insomnia and mind racing. I had acne on my torso primarily, and I had brain fog, and I was lethargic, and it was a bit irascible, kind of just irritable. And it's kind of this a nebulous array of symptoms they call adrenal fatigue, when the body's just kind of worn out. It's too stressed out. It's not getting its recovery, not in sleep and not in the normal course of the day. So I got recommended to take Accutane. Didn't want to take that. That's a drug that's been taken off the market now. It's got a lot of issues with it. That was just a kind of an aha moment. Oh, I'm not going to take pharmaceutical drugs. I want to attack the root cause of this issue. And so I went online, and during my research, I kept finding sauna and this idea of purifying the body, that perhaps the root cause of disease, or one of the biggest contributing factors, is poison, environmental poison of some kind, and the inability of the body to process that poison, whether it's stress or chemical or electromagnetic, or they're energetic, or emotional as well. There's so many different things. But if the temple's dirty, if the car is dirty, the analogy of the car is the best. If the car is really dirty, not only does it not perform well, but when it's really dirty, when you throw a little more mud on it, you don't even notice. I also found it interesting that every human culture has a sauna tradition of some kind, like dating back thousands of years across the world, from the Irish, they had Irish little sauna caves, to the Turkish hammams, to of course the Scandinavian sauna. But in the East as well, the Japanese hot pools and Korean hot pools, and in the Native American culture and South American Indian culture, the sweat lodges, and this is across the board, across the world. So you see a parallel evolution of sauna and the use of heat, which is really mimicking our experience with the sun and the, this heliotherapy. We made our own fire, and then we figured out, oh wow, if we heat our bodies up in this sustained fashion, we have some serious benefits that are going on here. So I saw the modern research indicating that sauna has all these amazing health benefits, reducing your risk of dying of all things. And then the ancestral wisdom were in sync. So I said, okay, definitely want to try this. And at the end of my research, I found Dr. Kellogg's electric light bath. So that's the sauna that I do. It's an incandescent light bulb powered sauna. It's a very different technology from all the standard infrared saunas that are out there, and the Finnish saunas and the wood fire, saunas of old, and the sweat tents. It's using the incandescent heat lamp light bulb. It turns out that he invented this like 130 years ago, and this is the original electrically powered sauna, and has 130 years of safe use testing, and his robust research into the use of the electric light bath for healing chronic illness is well documented in his book Light Therapeutics. He published it in 1910. You can read it online. He had like over 200,000 documented sauna sessions in it, and tens of thousands of patients. So this dude was incredible, and all of this was kind of lost in time. But I found this, and so I found a modern doctor's rendition of this concept of the electric light bath. I built my own, and I used it a couple times, and right before bed, and I used it right before bed, and I slept well. And then the next day I used it right before bed, and I, again, after showering off and so forth, went right to bed and slept amazing. And I realized I didn't have insomnia anymore. And it was like a couple sessions I was like, boom. And that really intrigued me, and was the impetus to continue to use the product with discipline for 6 months, at which point all of the problems I had kind of went away. All the adrenal fatigue and the acne, and my energy levels were different. Like my whole qualitative, state was different. And I was looking and feeling better. And I was like, wow, where is this product? Why can't you buy an electric light bath? And that was 10 years ago. So I know now that it took a lot of dedication and love and discipline to develop what my company offers today. But it's definitely It changed my life, and that's why I started the company. I was originally doing rental real estate. I was fixing up houses and stuff, but I shifted into this as it was my calling. I was doing something all of a sudden that I was transforming people's lives, and they're feeling better with this product that I'm making with love and producing this light and sending it out across the world. And it just was this huge sort of career, emotional, spiritual shift for me. And there was definitely a lot of struggles along the way, but it called to me, and I pursued it in earnest, and built the product line and the company, and it's all still handmade here in the USA, and it's the way I wanted it, basically, like 8 years ago. And it took 4 or 5 years to get very close to, or get, sort of to where we are now in terms of product offering and product experience. But it's still to this day, even though we're more and more mainstream than ever, still a lot of people don't know about incandescent light and electric light baths and its option as a sauna, even though it is mentioned as a legit sauna technology. And there's that review article last year by Dr. Rhonda Patrick, the studying lifestyle, or it's like the health span extension benefits of regular sauna use. It's something like that. I can send it to you afterwards, but it's a seminal summarizing article on the benefits in the literature from long-term cohort studies on using of sauna. What does it do for your body? And it basically reduces your risk of dying of all things, and it reduces your risk of dementia. Those are the two main outcomes that are incredible, and that's like the only known therapeutic that does that. And this is just another sauna option. What's intriguing about it is it's not only just a legit sauna option, it's the most efficient one. It's heating you up the quickest, producing the outcomes that we want, which I think was your question that we should talk about. Like, how do I practically do sauna? How do I get the results that are purported to be gotten in the literature, the benefits? And then what's also really intriguing about the electric light bath is it's light. So we're doing red light therapy with near infrared light, which penetrates really deeply. So we're doing what's also known as mitochondrial stimulation, and we're stacking it on top of the sauna therapy with definitely a synergistic, a synergy of results, of outcomes of the both therapies together. And so it's kind of like a no-brainer. Why not do it this way? So even though we're a new product in, the sauna industry in terms of being only 10 years old, and some of these other companies or other products being around for decades, the technology itself was actually the first electrically powered sauna technology. And we've just brought it back, and we've sort of updated with a lot of modern design principles and safe design principles, and dealing with electromagnetic stress issues and other just purpose-driven design to make it an actual consumer product.
I didn't realize this was the first modern electrical light bath ever created.
Yeah, so LEDs, were invented in, I don't know, less than 50 years ago, probably. That it was first, in terms of excluding well, if we include the light bath, there's the wood-fired saunas and the sweat lodges that are just not powered with any electricity. And then and that's prior to 1891. And then in 1891, there's the electric light bath and the electric arc light bath as well. The first electrically powered sauna concepts, technologies. And then after that, you have the sort of hot rocks electrical coil sauna that you put the hot rocks on. That's kind of like an electric finish sauna. And then in the 60s, there's the invention of the far infrared ceramic emitter, the long tube that emits far infrared wavelengths. And so the far infrared saunas come out at that point. And then later you have the more modern carbon panels, far infrared emitters that are invented. And that's sort of kind of where we're at today, where there's newer iterations of it, but those are basically the technologies. And somewhere along the way, LEDs were invented, in 50, 60, 70 years ago or whatever. And then there was a lot of studies. Most of the light therapy studies are indeed conducted with LEDs, although not all of them at all. Definitely there's some with the sun, with fluorescent bulbs, with incandescent light bulbs. But the original source of light in the universe is the sun, and in our experience in the sun. And the sun is an incandescent light source. And we use the word incandescence because it's the sort of physical nature of how the light is produced. The light is, you heat up a material really hot in nature and it emits light naturally. And so the sun does that at a very hot temperature. The incandescent light bulb's tungsten filament also does that at a very hot temperature. And it produces broad spectrum analog light. So it's light with a lot of visible light and a lot of infrared light. And it's all the wavelengths in a natural power curve that I would call nature's light, analog light, as opposed to these modern light sources like fluorescent light and LED light is digital light. It's stepwise, where you have light in certain wavelength concentrations, but you don't have a continuous emission of wavelengths. And that changes not just the way the light looks, but the way the light is perceived by the body, the qualitative nature of the light. And so this is more like the firelight. The incandescent light is like the firelight. So our sauna is more like a firelight sauna. It feels like that. It feels like being in front of the fire. Whereas some of these other saunas just feel like you're inside of a hot room. And there's definitely some benefit to that, but not nearly the benefit you get from adding in the light therapy and the qualitative benefit of the firelight. It's something that's really joyful and makes you feel good, in addition to, achieving the benefits of sauna.
Yeah, you had just coined the term firelight sauna when I met you. And now I'm curious, because before we move on to the benefits of sauna specifically, I'm curious about your lighting environment in the house. Do you have mostly incandescent bulbs around the house instead of LEDs or maybe halogen? How do you approach that? Because it's one thing to do a dedicated session every day or a couple times a week, and it's another to be constantly exposed and bombarded by these digital lights that have a very different spectrum, different wavelengths than we would get when we were outdoors typically.
Yeah, that's an absolutely fair question. I work at the computer a lot and I use LED screens. So I'm using blue light filters. I use Night Shift on Apple's OS, and I also use an app called Flux to reduce the amount of blue light. So the screen is more like red and brown, but the amount of blue light coming out of the screen affecting me is quite a bit reduced. But the problem is, yes, I have to work with the computer. And actually where you find me now is this is my Dallas working office, and it's a leased office. So all the light in it is built in, it's all LED. So I'm in the situation, just as I record with you here, that many, maybe most people are in nowadays, where they're kind of stuck with this built-in LED lighting or fluorescent lighting that's difficult or unmanageable to change out. If you can, yes, incandescent light bulbs are great if you have a socket that you can screw in. If you have all this built-in stuff, or even if you don't, the real solution is to correct the lighting environment by bringing the firelight spectrum into the indoor space. So in my apartment here, I have like 4 or 5 photons. I have one in my bedroom. I'm working with one right now. It's just off the camera. And there's one in my healing room, and there's one in the living room. So that, especially after dark, Nick, so during the day, there's, some LED light is fine. It's visible light, and we're designed to get blue and visible light spectrums during the day. But after sunset, we really want to cut back on that. And not just the screens, but the overhead lighting that you've indicated. So especially after dark, I try to just have only the light of the photon, which is the firelight spectrum. That's the one bulb portable light that we offer. And I primarily rely on that. But what's cool about it is you can have some LED light on, you can have some visible blue light on, and the light spectrum of this bulb will cancel out the measurable blue light. And you can see that on our Instagram. Like, you can measure with a light meter from the screen, for example, from this computer screen, the blue light emission, and then you turn the photon in some proximity to the space, and you see the measurable blue light drop to like 0. And that's because it's being overwhelmed by this by this infrared, mostly infrared, but red light that's coming off the bulb. So you could basically use the firelight spectrum to from my bulb, from this thermalite bulb, to cancel out and reduce the effect of blue light indoors that you're stuck with. And it's not something where you're building it in and where you can't change the built-in fixtures. Hey, you can bring the firelight in and both have a benefit from the light therapy itself and the heat as well, but also improve the lighting environment itself for human use indoors.
Yeah. I like that, Brian, because it is a perfect example of employing the principles of bioharmony to make a modern, convenient lifestyle more compatible with our own biology.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It's and that's what we're doing when we're biohacking. You know, we're it's bioharmony. It's probably a more elegant term for it, for sure. It's recognizing we're in a very synthetic environment and our bodies are in harmony with what our ancestral environment was. And how do we, and we can't escape that. We want to live in the modern world. We want to benefit from all this, some of these amazing aspects of modern life. How do we do little tweaks to our modern environment to make it more like the ancestral one? And light's probably one of the most overlooked things. I think people are paying attention to diet now and to water, but light is a tricky one. And we don't want blue light after dark, and but we do want some during the day. But when we're talking about blue light during the day, it's coming from the sun. It's not blue light of screens that's like super beneficial during the day. It's the blue light of the sun, and the sun is 70 in terms of photons per second. The sun is 70% near infrared. So when we're out there getting some blue light, some ultraviolet light from the sun, we're getting primarily this healing near infrared light that stimulates mitochondrial healing and melatonin production and various other healing biological pathways in every cell of the body. It's the sun that is what we're missing, definitely, all day long. That's like the number one thing. But if we can't get out there, then and we have indoor jobs, you know, we're working in front of the computer, then at least we can incorporate as much as possible this firelight spectrum into our daily lives. And certainly the sauna is a great way. The sauna has its own benefits that we need to talk about, but it's also great in the morning to give you that near infrared light dose. In my sauna anyway, the SaunaSpace Sauna, to program the brain and the eyes for the day by giving it the sunrise, sort of the Agnihotra sunrise near infrared light stimulus first before it starts to get a lot of blue light and ultraviolet light.
Because that's the way the light spectrum would change throughout the day. In the morning, it would be predominantly near infrared. And then as you approach solar noon, it becomes more blue, more UV. And UV is also demonized, but it has all kinds of benefits, from hormonal health to pain reduction to immunity, all kinds of things in the right dose. And then again, towards the evening, the spectrum shifts back again towards the red light.
Yeah, so we can kind of mimic that indoors with the use of the firelight. Certainly the sun's best, but what's also nice about the sauna is that depending on your environment, if it's really cold outside, if it's cloudy out, or it's such that you can't really take your shirt off, you're not getting that photobiomodulation benefit of near infrared in the morning from the morning sun while you're fully clothed. If you're in the privacy of your home, you can be in the sauna, you know, predominantly naked and get the stimulus in all cells of the body, which is what we're designed to get, not just our head and our arms.
One thing I was surprised you didn't mention at all about LEDs and certain other modern digital lighting technologies is flicker and the way it impacts our eyes, our nervous system, our biology on so many different levels.
Yeah, it's good that you bring that up. I should have mentioned it. It is very problematic. It's why people get, it's a big part of why people get technology fatigue and screen fatigue. It's partially too much blue light, but it's partially the rapidly pulsing light is a nervous stressor that causes headaches and just all kinds of neuropsychiatric sort of symptoms. And you do get that from pretty much all LED and fluorescent lighting, especially the standard domestic, lighting you see that's not like specialized. And what's cool about what we do is just as the photon and the light spectrum from this firelight bulb, this thermal light bulb, cancels out blue light, it also cancels out flickering light. And you can measure that with the flicker meter. Yeah, that's also on our Instagram. So you can there's flicker meters that measures the rate of pulse light, and an LED will pulse at 120 hertz, which is twice the supply. So the supply of in America is 60 hertz electricity, and alternating current switches. So basically the LED light bulb at 120 hertz is turning on and off 120 times a second, which is a lot. So it's really rapid. If you film it with your iPhone or something that's in slow mode video, you can see the flickering effect. So it's akin to having a strobe light in front of us. It's stressful and it's damaging to us, even though it's like really fast. It's a problem, and really it's a part of all this modern lighting. So the flickering light effect, the pulse light effect, is damaging in its cumulative effect, and us being exposed to it all day long, every day. And so there is a solution to it, in terms of bringing in the firelight spectrum using the photon, but just understand, it's not a part of the ancestral experience at all. Maybe like when the ancestral human was running really fast through the jungle and the starlight was kind of flickering above through the trees. That's pretty much it. There really is no pulsed light. All the light of the sun is direct. It's direct current. So it's non-pulsing, constant current light.
And that's also very different. That's not going to be, you're going to perceive that with your naked eye when you're running. It's not going to be 120 times per second, most likely. And it's not going to occur every day for long periods.
Absolutely. And it's interesting. So fluorescent light bulbs flicker the older ones flickered at 400 to 600 hertz. Some of the newer ones are like 1,000 hertz. So they're flickering really fast. And they also, when they pulse light, when they turn off briefly, they don't go from 100% power to 0% power like an LED. Fluorescent light bulbs go from 100% power to like 30 or 40% power. So the degree of the flicker is lesser. LED light bulbs or LED chips that produce light, when they pulse, they turn from 100% emission to 0 in terms of the wattage of emitted light, 120 times a second. So there's something that has to do with the slower rate of the pulsing at 120 hertz and the increased severity of the flicker that makes the LED flickering light more toxic than fluorescent light. In terms of the flicker, the stress on the body, the change in the cortisol levels and you like your heartbeat and things like that. It seems to be more stressful on the body, the LED flickering, because it's going completely on and off every time it flickers. And the slower flickering rate is something that it's closer to our ability to notice it. And when we see when we can perceive pulsing light, it's something that it really, it attracts our brain and our eyes and is a distraction for us. So all that to say that LEDs are not better than fluorescent light bulbs. They're in some ways worse in terms of the flickering, even though fluorescent light bulbs are mercury vapor. And so when they break, they're sort of this toxic chemical exposure that you get. So both of the options are not as good as incandescent bulbs, which get a bad rap because they're supposedly less efficient than LEDs, but there's no mercury vapor. There's no environmental, ecological, adverse consequences. They're totally recyclable. They're very affordable to make, and they produce light that has this healing spectrum of infrared that the LEDs lack and the fluorescents lack.
Yeah. The fluorescents, for context, are the ones that are like the curly Q shaped ones, and also like the long tubes that have like an eerie glow to them. And they also have problems with dirty electricity and other things too. So those I try to avoid at all costs. One thing I learned about phones is the seemingly obvious solution to light exposure at night, especially blue light, is to just lower the brightness. Like at least you're not going to get as much. But I learned that when you lower the brightness, you're actually increasing the rate of flicker. So it's like a trade-off.
Yeah, what I like to do is turn on the red color filter if I'm having to look at the phone after dark and make it deeply red, which will reduce the blue. But yeah, it's you just shouldn't be on those devices, after dark as much as possible. Limited use is fine. It's always the daily habits that really get to us.
Yeah. I don't know if you've heard of it, Brian, but I'm a huge fan of a Mac and I think PC app called Iris Tech. And it's like Flux or Night Shift on steroids. And the major advantage it has over the other ones is that it also greatly reduces or eliminates the screen flicker from the computer.
Oh, I'm not familiar with that. I'll check it out. It's called Iris Tech.
Yeah. And it's a couple bucks, but it's worth it because it lasts and I use my computer for many hours every day, so might as well optimize that light exposure and then offset it with a photon or other high quality light source as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We should all be paying attention to the spaces and the places that we spend the most time in. If you're like you and me and you work at a computer for many hours a day, then take time to optimize that. And it's the screen, it's the space, it's the feng shui of it, it's the seat you use, everything. All those things matter. And they really have especially the light change. I couldn't, if now that I've gotten used to working with the photon next to me at the computer, which has been many, many years now, it is quite difficult for me to work for an extended period of time without it. I wear blue blockers, when I'm traveling and I'm on the computer, in a plane or something like that, where there's not a whole lot of ambient light, but it's just definitely not the same as working next to the firelight. So yeah, you have to try it out. It's really, it really changes the game.
Yeah. I know that when like those lights are too close to me, since they're outputting near infrared light and it has a heating effect on the body, it might make me sweat if I'm already hot and it's on and too close. How far do you keep yours away from you?
Well, you don't have to point it directly towards you, so you can just have it next to you and like facing up. So it's not really ever heating you up directly so much that it becomes something that is too much. If you do point it at the body and you're doing localized therapy, you're using it for up to half an hour at a time on the body. If you're using it on the head, it's only 10 minutes per hour that you do. And that's at a distance of 15 to 36 inches. So just up close and personal, you do limited duration. If you just have it either on our photon desk arm that we offer or just on the desk pointing up next to you, or even in the vicinity, it's still having that benefit on the blue light cancellation, the flicker cancellation, and it's still ambiently improving your lighting environment without it having a targeted therapy effect that you would want to limit your duration of. So you could just point it up or angle it sort of away and not have it angling towards you. Having said that, I just sometimes I point it at myself, and sometimes I roll up my shirt and point it on my chest or my gut. And then most of the time it's just pointed up. So it's improving the photonic space for 4 or 5 feet in this bubble of my helm here, where I have my monitors and all my computer stuff.
All right. Now that we've talked thoroughly about light and the different types and how to get your basic light environment optimized, let's go on to sauna usage. What the research is. You mentioned Dr. Rhonda Patrick and her study and her own research and her explanations of how a couple times a week sauna usage can reduce your chances of dying from any cause, but I think it's by 40%. And that took the Western world by storm. And now sauna is no longer a taboo topic, but you are one of the OGs. So I'm curious to hear what you have to say about the literature and the experience and benefits you're seeing around sauna usage.
Yeah, first of all, let's talk about that paper a little bit. You've touched on the highlights. So that was a review review article on the literature, the benefit you're specifically referred to in sauna use, reducing your all-cause mortality by 40%. It's tied to this study by Laucanen. It was published in 2015, so it's a little bit older now, where they looked at cardiovascular disease and heart attack and death due to cardiovascular disease. And they found two interesting outcomes. One, the people doing sauna 1 day a week versus the group not doing sauna had their risk of dying of heart disease reduced by like 40%. That's what you just said. What was more interesting was that on top of that, the subjects in the testing group that were doing sauna like 3 or 4 times a week had an additional 30 or more percent reduced risk of development of heart disease versus the 1 day a weekers. So the conclusion was not just that sauna reduces your risk of dying of all things, but the more you do it, the better, the more reduction in risk you get. So that was amazing. And yes, that took the world by storm. What's really fascinating is they continue to follow that group of 2,000 Finnish males. At that point, it was a 20-year study, which was why it's so impressive. A very long-term, large cohort study that came to this conclusion. So they followed the same group for another like 5 years. And this time they were looking at dementia outcomes. And guess what they found? They found the same thing. If you're doing sauna, your risk of dementia is reduced like 30, 40%, your risk of developing dementia. And if you're doing sauna 2, 3, 4 days a week, your risk decreases another 20 to 30 to 40%, depending on, other lifestyle factors. So sauna is clearly demonstrated now in this long-term, large population study, and there's other ones too now out there, to reduce your risk of dementia and reduce your risk of dying of all things. There's not any other therapeutic that's ever been studied that provides that, guarantees that, or brings that, I should say. So the question becomes, how do I get that? So when we looked at these studies, it seems like the sweet spot is to do it at least 3 times a week, to do a sauna session, to purportedly get these benefits. And then the second practical question is, what is a sauna session? And how does that look? And how do I know I'm getting a sauna session as per these clinical studies and these outcomes that everybody's talking about? And so when we look at these studies, there's basically 2 outcomes that you can measure that are outcomes that they were measuring that are very practical and very simple and are validation and confirmation that I had a great sauna session today. And one is how much water you sweat out. So in these studies, the average sauna session, the average sauna subject in an average sauna session was sweating out 1 to 2 pounds of water. 1 to 2 pounds of water. So you can measure yourself on a digital scale before and after the sauna session. And your weight loss is exactly equivalent to how much water you sweat out. Going for 1 pound here. So you can just measure that. The other outcome is, I think, obvious, but it's important to say it. And it's raising core body temperature by 3 degrees, which is what causes you to sweat, basically. So we don't want to raise core temperature by 0.5 degree or 1 degree. It seems that the holistic, so this whole body, this reduction in risk of disease and dementia is associated with heating the body up by at least 3 degrees for a sustained period of time. So you can measure that as well with a thermometer and just measure whatever you in your mouth or in your armpit, wherever you want to measure your base body temperature, and then you want to go up 3 degrees. So if you're at 98.6, you're going up to 101.6 or 102 degrees, and that is sufficient. And that will be coupled with some significant amount of sweat loss. And then the third outcome, which is not measurable quantitatively, but I think is important to mention, is subjective exhaustion. What was found in this review of the literature is it's ideal to be in the sauna and bring yourself to a point of subjective exhaustion. And this has to do with something called dynorphins. Dynorphins are things that are produced in the body that make you feel uncomfortable during exercise. And how many dynorphins you produce is proportional to how many endorphins you produce after the workout or after the sauna session. So just like in a workout, you get to that point where you're really uncomfortable and you're really tired. And then if you can push yourself a little bit further, you feel, wow, so much more accomplishment and that endorphin rush afterwards, and that sort of bliss, that comes afterwards, that elation that comes afterwards. It's the same thing with the sauna session. You get in, you sweat out a pound of water, you raise core temperature 3 degrees, two measurable things, and you get to a point where you feel kind of uncomfortable. And you're like, wow, I'm getting hot. I'm done. I've had enough. If you can, within your own judgment of what's safe and reasonable for you, stay in for another minute to 3 minutes in that state of subjective exhaustion, in that state of uncomfortability. Boom. The qualitative benefits of feeling better afterwards are sort of maximized. So those are the 3 things, particularly the first 2 things, that are easy ways to confirm I've had a real sauna session.
That's too funny. I intuitively arrived at the same conclusion. I discovered that I like to go to the limit of my comfort and then push just a little bit more, another 1 to, I don't know, 3 or 4 minutes, somewhere in there. And then without fail, whenever I leave the sauna session, I just feel better. It feels more rewarding. I didn't know that was actually something like a best practice.
Yeah, and then that's your intuition. There's a part of the body. Yes, you're uncomfortable, but it's a intermittent stress that is you rationalize with your mind. This is good for my body. It's just like that high intensity exercise, like just pushing a little bit harder for a little bit longer. It brings those benefits afterwards. So we see that biochemically in this concept of dynorphins leading to the production of endorphins post-workout. And the sauna, by the way, is a workout. The sauna session, as I've described it, is a 60 to 100 kilowatt workout. And in that you have calorie burn, you have, growth hormone production, increased heart rate, and basically all of the cardiovascular and thermoregulatory benefits of exercise, as well as weight loss benefits over time as you continue to do this. And this is a very safe way to do this. And in some ways, it doesn't replace exercise, but it's not, it's just as good and perhaps more important maybe than exercise in the sense of detoxification. Since our bodies are so poisoned nowadays with so many environmental chemicals and toxins, the body uses adipose tissue to hide toxins, heavy metals and petrochemicals and so forth. So when we're trying to go to the gym and lose that unwanted fat, we're needing to detox these hidden toxins that are coming out of the fat tissue that's being metabolized. So if you're working out, that's great, but definitely be following that up with the sauna session for not just to support the detoxification process you're going through, but also for the post-workout recovery, for digesting the lactic acid to sort of minimize and alleviate muscle soreness that occurs. So there's a ton of benefits of sauna. It's not just living longer and making sure your brain is still working right into old age. There's also athletic performance benefits and sleep benefits. That was my particular story, but that's also well validated. Changing the body's core temperatures dramatically by a few degrees, whether it's cold therapy or hot therapy, will lead to improved sleep, and on and on and on. So when people get like, I guess a little bit maybe sometimes too left-brained about and overanalyzing like the technology and the health and what to do and how to do it. That's how simple the sauna is. Heat the body up 3 degrees and make sure you sweat out a pound of water. And then and it doesn't really matter what time of day is. There are preferences, and maybe it's better for sleep right before bed. I prefer in the morning to calibrate my day from the near infrared light dosing to the improved cognitive function that comes with the sauna. But it doesn't really matter. And then ultimately, if you can sweat out a pound of water and increase core temp 3 degrees, the last question becomes, well, which type of heating technology do I want to use to achieve this benefit? And I feel strongly that what we do here is just more efficient. It heats up the body faster. There's no preheating of the sauna. SaunaSpace sauna sessions, 20 minutes, 25 minutes without any like preparation beforehand. And we talked about it before, but it serves to reiterate that there's so much benefit to photobiomodulation that it's becoming more and more mainstream and more well accepted. And there's benefit to every cell of your body, just like sauna. So they're two wonderful therapies, therapeutics that you can wrap together and do in a very efficient, a 20-minute investment 3 times a week for a pretty stunning array of benefits, actually. We've incorporated a couple other things into the sauna as well, like a grounding mat. And there's our higher end sauna is called the Faraday, and it has a EMF blocking silver-based electromagnetic shielding system in it, and that's really cool. It really creates like this meditative zen den inside where you don't have any sort of environmental stressors. But even without that, even with just the basic sauna or any sauna, you have a wonderful opportunity to engage in breath work or a meditative practice. And so there's so many things we can do for our health. This is one thing that's a time investment that I think is reasonable, and it checks so many boxes that it's like, well, why not do it? Why not do sauna? Why not do light therapy? And if you're going to do that, why not do it this way with the incandescent bulb, and sort of the way that I recommend doing it.
When I was in your Faraday tent, is that what you call it, a tent? At the Biohacking Congress event, my first thought was, wow, I want to spend most of my day in one of these things. Maybe bring my laptop in, and I get that defeats some of the purpose of shielding some of the EMF, but it just feels like a very welcoming and nice environment to be in.
Yeah, it is. It's a good topic maybe to touch on real quick. The man-made electromagnetic stress is another one of these environmental stressors in our environment that we're not programmed to deal with. The ancestral humans don't have any, and we nowadays, we don't have any biological programming for continuous stress. We didn't have that ancestrally at all. And the EMF stress is something that's 24 hours a day that's really hard to escape, especially if you're in any kind of urban area. And what it does is it triggers your voltage-gated calcium ion channels in your cells. It's in every cell of the body. It's a calcium signaling system. And it basically causes a lot of oxidative stress in your cells and leads to DNA damage through peroxynitride production. So it's very much akin to a slow like X-ray dose that you're getting in terms of damaging the DNA, damaging mutations in the DNA, and then overall just oxidative stress in the body, which causes disease and aging and damage. And so it's definitely Dr. Martin Pall's work is validated that this is definitely a cellular, like the human biology is affected by a microwave signal, a cell phone signal for sure, adversely. And now we see clinical associations to disease. We're just waiting for more long-term studies to see like 20, 30-year effects, but clearly it's there. It affects the heart and the brain and the nervous tissue the most, which makes sense because those have the highest concentrations of the voltage-gated calcium ion channels. And we have a billion times and more EMF that's man-made, non-native than we had 100 years ago. So it's something that's kind of like a new silent spring. It's something that slowly but surely is becoming more and more of a health concern as we move into higher and higher wattages of man-made EMF and it be more ubiquitous across the globe and across the earth. And we certainly ideally wouldn't want it in our lives. We do need it. I think for many aspects of modern life, maybe it could take a different form, and there's interesting technologies and options. We'll see how it goes. But for right now, we're basically stuck with cellular signal for wireless data transmission. And it is a crucial aspect of modern life currently. And so it's really unavoidable is what I'm saying. So if we can't avoid it in the course of our daily life and our working life, at least we can hopefully remove it from our therapeutic experiences, which is sauna and any kind of meditation or any kind of therapeutic thing you're doing, and sleep. And so my sauna, it protects you from the wired electricity with the grounding mat, and then with the Faraday liner, it protects you from all the ambient wireless electromagnetic signals that are around. And it is optional for people who want it, but people who do try it, they love it. It's like, well, you feel it. It's very quiet to the senses inside. And it's just like, it's a no-brainer. You wouldn't meditate in a polluted space. So ideally, you're not doing your healing therapy and your therapeutic practice in a space that's polluted with electrosmog. So so we've incorporated that into the product line. The light panels themselves are portable light panels, and our sauna panels are all electromagnetically shielded entirely. So they're not emitting any electric field or magnetic field that's measurably influencing the user. And then obviously, if you can Faraday protect the entire sauna space, then that's the best thing. And so we do provide that option, and people love it. It's something that we came out with, I don't know, like 4 years ago, and it was very sort of conceptual, and the market loved it, and we've continued to iterate on it, producing our own organic fabric. So it's all completely organic certified materials, and it looks beautiful. But that's definitely not enough. It's enough for the sauna therapy itself. But ideally, you're protecting your sleeping space too, because that's a third of your life. You're you're in bed and you're sleeping, and that's a hugely important time for recovery. And so there are canopy providers out there that are making some cool products. You can also buy shielding paint, basically some carbon-based shielding paints that basically block cell phone signal, and that's more elaborate and more involved, but it's just like optimizing your workspace, like we talked about earlier. Optimizing your sleeping space is it has so much return on investment. And so there are solutions out there. Yes, there's so much EMF around, but those are two ways that you can really bring some very effective countermeasures into mitigating your exposure to EMF. And the last thing I'll say is that, okay, well, what about the EMF that I am giving during the day? What about the electromagnetic toxins and toxicity that's going on from all this stress from the cell phone signal and the Wi-Fi and everything I interact with all day long? So sauna practice and the therapy of the sauna reverses peroxynitrite concentration. It basically lowers it through the production of tetrahydrobiopterin, BH4. It's a couple different biological pathways where in sauna therapy is reversing the oxidative stress effects that the EMF stress is causing. So we see here in a very promising fashion sauna therapy as a tool to detox from the electromagnetic stress too, and to recover from it, and from the unfortunately necessary exposure that we have every day to it.
One note I will add: if you're going to go the route of hiring or of retrofitting your house with a canopy or paint, especially, it might make sense to hire a building biologist to ensure that you're not trapping any sources and causing those signals to bounce around the room and possibly harm you more than you would be otherwise. And another good resource to learn more about non-native electromagnetic fields is a book called EMF. I'm sure you're familiar with that. One thing I did want to discuss was the last and final parameter of an optimal sauna protocol. You mentioned that it's important to get the core body temperature up a couple of degrees and for an appropriate amount of time. Is that appropriate amount of time in the 3-minute range or 20-minute range or somewhere in between?
That's a good question. I will say, I wanted to mention also, since you said that about the building biologist, that is really, really key. There's some great experts out there. It just helps to have someone who knows what they're doing, because the science of electromagnetism is tricky in terms of its mitigation and that's so, especially in the home space and in the building spaces. I actually recommend a gentleman named Brian Hoyer of Shielded Healing. He's an excellent building biologist that has his own more evolved approach. I think that's really fascinating. So you can check him out for sure. But to your question, once you do sauna quite a bit, you get a feel for it, and you know when you've really gotten to that state of subjective exhaustion. But if you think about it, when you get in the sauna, if you get in my sauna, you start out at 98.6, turn the lights on, sit down. For the first 10 minutes, you only sweat lightly. Like, I'll start sweating in the first 5 minutes a little bit, but the strong sweating doesn't come until, well, in the 7-bulb system that I use, it comes actually pretty fast at about 8 or 9 minutes. But if we talk about a 4-bulb system, our standard offering, the strong sweating, where there's sweat beating up on the skin, starts happening at about 15 minutes or maybe 18 minutes. And so if you measure your body temperature at that point, that's when you've gone up at least 2 degrees, at least 2.5 degrees. And so if you keep measuring, you hit 3 degrees core temperature increase at about 18 to 20 minutes. And again, faster the more bulbs you use. So on the 4-bulb system, I would typically do a 28-minute session. And in 28 minutes, I will sweat out over a pound of water, and I'll raise core temperature over 3 degrees. Now, if you talk, that's a very precautionary recommendation, and we want this to be a successful, safe experience for all the different user types out there, especially those with underlying conditions and thermoregulatory issues. People who have autoimmune issues sometimes have body temperature control issues and sensitivity that means that they need to use less bulbs, and they do shorter durations, and they titrate up to sort of a normal use of 4 bulbs for 20 or 25 minutes. I'm using 7 bulbs. I'm doing, this is like what Dr. Mercola does, 7 or 8 bulbs in a very intense, very stimulating session for a very short period of time. But we've been using sauna for over 10 years. He's used it even more than me. So there's an acclimation there that you build up to. So what I'm getting at is that, like, some people will recommend more than 3 degree temperature increase, even 4 degrees, even 5 degrees. That could be dangerous for some people. And, I'm not a healthcare provider. You need to talk to your healthcare provider about sauna use before you use it, as particularly, if you have any health issues or any conditions of any kind. But as you use sauna, it's just like anything else. As you become healthier and you know yourself more, and you know what you're in tune with yourself and your feelings, you know what's good for you, and you know when you've had enough, and you know when you need more in the things that you do. And so you feel in the session, when you've reached that point of subjective exhaustion and when you're good. I've been in there and I have increased core temperature up by like 5 degrees or more, and taking me up into 103.5, even 104 degrees. And some of the cancer clinics, like in Mexico and in Germany, they do a targeted hyperthermic therapy with this, this kind of like acoustic vibration device. I don't know what it is exactly, but it's a targeted hyperthermic, heating therapy to the targeted tissue, the tissue of concern. And they go for 107 degrees and 106 degrees for a limited duration. This is carefully monitored, with physicians on staff and nurses on staff, but the body can actually handle all that for limited durations. It's just when you're at home and you're doing this on your own, you don't want to take a safe, slow, measured approach. The turtle wins the race here. So the best thing to do, back to your question, is, if you're totally unsure, is to use that thermometer and measure yourself. And so the first time you do it, don't go above 3 degrees core temperature increase. Just do that. And then weigh yourself before do measure with a thermometer every 5 minutes. And once you hit 3-degree temperature increase above your base, get out and measure and weigh yourself. And you'll see, okay, I sweat out 3/4 of a pound of water, or maybe it was a pound, or maybe it was a pound and a quarter, and you'll see, and you'll figure out what the sweet spot is for you. But definitely the body sits there probably, Nick, for 5 or 10 minutes after reaching a 3-degree temperature increase, where you're in the sauna having elevated core temperature 2 or 3 degrees. You're in there another 5 or 10 minutes to have that full sweat loss that you're going for of at least 1 pound. And keep in mind, it was actually 1 to 2 pounds. So again, we're being very precautionary here, but in the traditional sauna approach, you're going for, it's intense. It's 2 pounds of water. It's potentially over 3-degree core temperature increase. And in some protocols, they're doing that twice a day.
Now I'm curious about how much my core temp changes, but it's good to know that it's less about the duration and getting an exact amount of duration of how long your core temperature is over 3 or 4 minutes, and more based off just measuring the two other things that we discussed, your amount of sweat and how much water you lose. And what was the other one?
The subjective exhaustion. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's just that's a judgment call that you make. But I like the measuring the weight loss, and that's the sweat you sweat out, and measuring the core temperature increase with the thermometer, because it demystifies the sauna session. This is how a sauna session is. And it's not about duration, because in my sauna, when you're using incandescent light to heat the body, you're achieving that in 25 minutes, 20 minutes. If you're using a far infrared sauna, you're going to preheat it for an hour and then spend an hour in there to achieve a similar core temperature increase. In a finished sauna, even in a wet, like a steamed bath sauna, you still spend twice the amount of time to achieve the same outcome of this much sweat loss and this much core temperature increase. So those are the outcomes to measure, because it doesn't matter how hot the heat source is. You could be in a hot tub. You could be in a hot pool, in a hot spring. What matters is what is the outcome? What is the result in the effect on the human body? The temperature increase and the sweat loss. And that's where we're getting the results of the sauna. And I say that too, because there's so many different sauna technologies you can choose. I think it's it's the smartest way to use the most efficient one and the safest one, without the EMFs and with the light therapy. But in the review article, the Dr. Patrick review article, there's a mention of impressive thermoregulatory outcomes and cardiovascular outcomes that were identified in studies using sauna suits with athletes, where they just basically wore these like tinfoil suits while they worked out. And they measured, and they were getting this heat therapy by having the heat held in and trapped in, and they were getting amazing results. And so you see across the board, the technology doesn't really matter. What matters is, have we heated the body up? Have we provoked a sweat? And then are we doing that passively? And then that state of suggestive exhaustion is that third thing that is harder to measure, but it's something that as you use sauna over time, you get a sensitivity over that. And yeah, the more you can stay in just a few minutes when it feels uncomfortable, the increased feelings of elation and so forth you have afterward.
Yeah. Brian, I know you have to run in a few minutes, but really quickly, can you just shotgun a bunch of the different benefits of sauna usage? You've mentioned growth hormone and other anabolic hormones. You've mentioned sleep, recovery, enhancing cognition even. And if there's a resource you want to direct people to, whether on your website or otherwise, that has a good compilation of all these, that works too.
Yeah, I'm on my website on sauna.space. You can go under the Learn section in the menu and click on health benefits. You can also click on some of the other Learn pages and learn about the science of sauna and of light therapy. But particularly in terms of the health benefits, real rapid fire, yes, the ones you mentioned: sleep, improved blood tissue oxygenation, improved blood circulation, It sauna therapy and light therapy both promote a regeneration and an improved vascular distribution. So it makes your blood vessels bigger with thicker walls, and it promotes growth of new blood vessels in tissues tissues across the body. It increases BDNF production, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which presumably leads to the improved cognitive function you get from sauna and from actually light therapy too, but the BDNF is from sauna therapy. So improved cognitive function means improved recall, improved decision-making, improved like task management and doing. There's interesting studies with light therapy where you're doing non-routine tasks and your performance in non-routine tasks improves post photobiomodulation. You also have immune modulation benefits from both sauna and from the light therapy, and that means it's making your your immune system work better. It's programming your immune system to respond faster, and then reform and go back to the way it was faster to avoid cytokine storm and autoimmune, type of responses. So literally the sauna is inducing what your body does artificially, inducing its own hyperthermic state when it induces a fever to fight off pathogens. You're doing the same thing there. So talk about a huge boost to your immune function. And I think that's really relevant nowadays. But definitely the reduced all-cause mortality, the reduced risk of dying of all things. And so many chronic diseases have been discussed in the literature: reduction in dementia, reduction in Parkinson's, reduction in Alzheimer's. We see a reduction in risk of stroke. And then with light therapy, we see so many things as well, like accelerated wound and muscle healing, cell regeneration, production of collagen, so improved, functioning of the skin tissue and the look and the feel of the skin tissue. So the light therapy also has those improved cognitive function benefits as well that overlap, even though they're doing so in different ways. Light therapy has anti-aging benefits because it improves your gene transcription factor processes and how your blueprint of your cell is read. There's there's more things than that too, like the sleep that you said. That's more from the sauna. The light therapy has a lot of neuropsychiatric benefits, and so does sauna in terms of improving mood, helping with depression and anxiety and indecisiveness and negativity. Really fascinating how the two, continue to overlap in their own ways. But sauna has a benefit from detoxing from EMFs, but it also has a benefit in sort of these more nebulous, more challenging to deal with chronic issues like chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia and things like that. And because sauna, one thing we didn't talk about is important to mention here at the end is that sauna doesn't just detox you; it produces heat shock proteins, and they help the body, the cells detox, but they also improve the functioning of proteins around them because they refold misfolded proteins. So the heat shock proteins are like these little repairmen that go and fix misfolded proteins inside and outside of the cell, which improves protein function and enzyme function, which has cellular and tisular and systemic effects like improving the folding of the insulin receptor protein moiety outside of the cell, improves insulin signaling, which reduces insulin resistance. So here you have the sauna having a improvement in the hormonal system of the body, the master communication system of the body, that has so many, has just a cascade of different benefits and all sorts of diseases and all things that people deal with. Most people are insulin resistant to a certain degree, and most of the proteins like in the body are not folded right. Even it's presumed that like 20 or 30% of the proteins as they're made out of the ribosome are already misfolded. So the body clearly has this built-in corrective system to constantly fix those if you're doing sauna, if you're getting, some kind of frequent heat shock therapy. So it all makes sense to do sauna, and the same thing with the light therapy, getting a lot of sun every day. And if we can't get that, then then this firelight spectrum is the next best thing, particularly with the melatonin production that we threw in the beginning. It's not just the healing benefits of stimulating the mitochondria, it's also the near-infrared light produces or stimulates the cell to produce the body's number one antioxidant, melatonin, at the cell. And most of the melatonin in the body is at the cellular level. It's not in the pineal gland. So it's a basic corrective system a basic antioxidative system that all you have to do is shine this near-infrared light on the tissues, and they do this. But if we don't have it, we quickly degrade and suffer.
I like that description of heat shock proteins being little repairmen.
Yeah, they really are, and they're dormant at a resting body temperature. So if we're not heating the body up some way, and exercise does it too, but when we do sauna, we are activating all of these healing systems, including the heat shock proteins, and we're not using any energy for locomotion. We're instead using all this extra energy and resources in the cells for healing and repair and cell optimization. And that's what it's all about nowadays. Like longevity and real wellness is all about re-optimization of cellular function.
Yeah. To clarify one thing you mentioned several times now, Brian, you keep talking about both the benefits of red light therapy and visible light, and then also of the infrared. And are you saying that the near infrared, since it sits between the two in terms of spectrum, that you get some of the benefits of each?
When I have to mention light therapy during our conversation, I'm specifically referring to photobiomodulation. So red light and near-infrared light, 600 to 1,000 nanometer wavelengths is the light band that is absorbed by the cytochrome C, the light receptor enzyme on the mitochondria. So when I say light therapy as this sort of catch-all term, it's visible red light and half of the near-infrared light band, the higher frequency portion that's next to red, that stimulates the mitochondrial response. That is the photobiomodulation, the light controlling biology. That is the light therapy. So red light and the higher frequency near-infrared light, 600 to 1,000 nanometers across that band, they all do the same thing. They're absorbed by the mitochondria, and they have these effects on that are called mitochondrial functions or mitochondrial stimulation effects. However, due to the difference in tissue penetration, red light therapy doesn't do anything deep into the body. Red light wavelengths don't penetrate deeply into the body. They don't penetrate bone tissue, for example. So if you want to do photobiomodulation, light therapy on your brain or on your deep internal organs, red light wavelengths are useless. They don't get in deep. Only near-infrared wavelengths do. That's why when we look at the sun and we see that 40% of the sun spectrally is near-infrared wavelengths, in terms of if you measure the sun spectrum and you look at the area under the curve that's in the near-infrared band, it's 40%. But if you recall what I said at the beginning of our conversation was that in terms of photons per second experienced, our bodies are getting 70% near-infrared from the sun. And the reason for that is because near-infrared light is penetrating 4 to 5 inches into the body on average. So if we think of all the cells across the cross-section of our entire body that are absorbing light from the sun, every moment that you're in front of the sun, if you were completely naked, 70% of the absorption is of near-infrared photons. And a very, very much lesser amount is red light, blue light, ultraviolet light, and every other light, and mid-infrared and far infrared. So when I refer to light therapy, it's referring to red and near-infrared, but the bulbs that we use, the thermal eye bulbs, and what we focus on is more near-infrared centric. It's a small amount of red that our eye sees, but it's primarily a larger majority amount of near-infrared that our eyes don't see. And they do the same thing to the mitochondria, but because near-infrared goes in deeper, only near-infrared light is really effective for dealing with the brain and the internal organs of the body, and they all need that. So near-infrared is more essential than red in getting in deep and doing that this amazing stuff to the deepest tissues of the body. The only visible light portion of that is red in terms of, certainly there are we have light receptors for other wavelengths of light. We have light receptors for blue light, in our eyes and in our gut, actually, and in our brains. But it's an entirely different biology, and it's not so much about cellular reoptimization and healing or sort of these sort of healing things. Blue light is more about the circadian rhythm, which is important and an important part of our health. Blue light stimulus during the day promotes melatonin production in the pineal gland. And then after the sun sets, that's released to the brain clock, and that tells your body to go to sleep. So if we want that exposure, but even, again, last thing is, like, we're out in the sun, we're getting this blue light, we're getting ultraviolet light, dose dependent, which is good. But 70% of what we're getting while we're getting ultraviolet and blue is actually near infrared, which is stimulating mitochondrial functions, structuring the water in the body, stimulating melatonin, cellular melatonin production, and doing really the grunt work, doing the large majority portion of the benefit that we get from the sun. And it's kind of not as well recognized because we don't see it. It's infrared. And it feels good and we feel good. It's all the talk with the sun is all about ultraviolet and blue and stuff, but it's all about near infrared. That's the magic wavelength band. And the more we study it, the more we understand this. So very fascinating.
I agree. We could talk for hours, but our time is rapidly winding down. We're already a little bit over. If people are interested in connecting with you and trying out SaunaSpace, how do they go about that?
You can check us out on sauna.space. That's our website. A lot of learn stuff. All of our products are on there, and our story, and our customer service is available, every day of the week. It's all handcrafted in Missouri, and all comes with a 100-day trial. So we'd love, if you don't like it, it's okay. But if you do try it out, we know you'll love it. We have a lot of content on our Instagram. It's just our handle SaunaSpace. And then also on our YouTube. If you just check out SaunaSpace on YouTube, we got a lot of great content on there to learn about the science, learn about the product, learn about our difference.
Beautiful. And you have set up a code for anyone in the Mind Body Peak Performance audience that wants to give it a shot. And every time I talk to you, I leave these conversations all excited about my returning and increasing my sauna practice, even though I already do it regularly. So thank you for adding light, no pun intended, to the space and continuing to do this and share for the last decade and hopefully a lot longer into the future.
Thank you for having me, Nick. It's always a pleasure.
Pleasure's mine. I'm Nick Urban here with Brian Richards, signing out from mindbodypeak.com. Have a great week and be an outlier. I hope that this has been helpful for you. If you enjoyed it, subscribe and hit the thumbs up. I love knowing who's in the 1% committed to reaching their full potential. Comment 1% below so that I know who you are. For all the resources and links, meet me on my website at mindbodypeak.com. I appreciate you and look forward to connecting with you. As a reminder, the information depicted in this video is for information purposes only. Please consult your primary healthcare professional before making any lifestyle changes.